know that I fought for everyone's right to have an opinion in this country, but I also fought for freedom, and it is not fair to be black in America and still not be free in 2021. That is not okay.
So love is the answer. Not violence, not color, but love.
We were discussing earlier discrepancies in health equity and also social economic status when it comes to racial aspects, but Denzel said any progress is beneficial, it's good. Any progress is progress. So I just wanted to know what you guys feel like you could take from what you did this summer, throughout this year, throughout the movement, and incorporate that into your daily lives, past the Black Lives Matter movement, past the racial tension. What good do you think you can give back to this county in particular? I know you go to school in a city, you go to school, we all go to schools in cities, and Michael, you're in Heatsville still, but what good do you think you can bring back to Heatsville? And also, what do you think the older generation can do to help? Because like you said, older generations kind of like, oh, change, we got to stay away from it, but we know that change is necessary. So what do you think you can do to help the community, and what do you think they can do to help the community?
Just on the second question, well, I guess it has to do with the first two. I think that what I'll try to do is figure out how I can relate to the people who are reluctant, whether it's people who are Caucasian, whether it's just people who are more conservative and been here for a while, or whether it's just older African Americans, right? Because I may not agree with them, but they're still my neighbors, and I try not to. I'm not perfect. Try not to define people by their problems or what I disagree with them on, right? Understanding rural life and why people may be fearful. Understanding whiteness, to be quite frankly, is something that's not explored. What is it like to grow up all your life and told that everything is perfectly okay for you, and be completely oblivious to the fact that for others, at least racially for others, all of a sudden be told that you have some sort of advantage because of the color of your skin, right? I imagine that's a shock. I imagine that's why people are fearful, because they feel personally attacked, because something they've been told all their life either isn't true or either isn't the full story. So I think that that's very critical in this area, because you're not going to get away from the fact that we do have Caucasians here, we do have more conservative people here. And for me at least, I think religion is a place we can start. I think that if anything, during the whole pandemic, not only this summer, I've built my faith, really try to understand the Bible, the gospel, the work of Jesus, and I think that's a place where we can start connecting with people, because there's so many people around here, even if they just go to church on Sunday and after that don't really carry out their faith. I think that's a point, especially in rural areas, where you can begin to connect with people. I think like economic issues is a place you can connect with people, because there's some wealthy people here, but many people here are middle class or lower class. If you were to say that we want something like a better public school system, right, to lift all boats, that wouldn't just help a kid who's a kid of a single mom. That would also help someone who's in a middle class family, because rural students in general have a hard time competing with students from urban areas with more resources, right? So I think that answers the question. Just trying to find places where I can connect, and at the same time tackling the racial issue, and just showing people that if we do this, it's good for all of us. I'm not narcissistic and want to just help people who have the same color as me, who have the same color skin as me. It's for the community, and I think that in some capacity I want to try to do that, whether it's teaching, coming back and teaching, or being a lawyer in the area or whatever it may be.
Good for you. Good point. I like that.
That's really something I think older people can do is read and continually be learners. Like how they teach us in school to never stop learning and seeking information, because like with the fear of change, a lot of fear is out of ignorance and just not knowing what outcome this particular thing is going to have for me and the people that I care about. So learning, acknowledging implicit bias, like he was saying, the way just trying to understand both sides of the spectrum, like what it is to come up white and Caucasian in America versus what it is to come up black. You know, on a world stage, white is seen as better. So I think that everyone, like the way that white is seen as better, even unconsciously by black people, like reading and caring about things to a certain degree is like white or not. Like who gets to gatekeep what is black or what blackness means and how you express that. So I got kind of lost where I was going, but
That's okay.
Yeah, learning, that's the main thing I'm coming back to.
Yeah, you should never stop learning. That's right.
And just to piggyback on that, I was going to also say educating both yourself and others around you. Social media is really, a huge platform that I'm sure everybody in the room has. And by pushing, true narratives and pushing actual facts, making people read these things, and also making white people understand that they have had a privilege in this country for over 400 years, and since the existence. And I think white privilege and white fragility and just this idea of you will always be ahead of me needs to be understood, especially as an African American, especially as an African American man. White people will always have a one-up on us. So I think that should definitely be understood amongst white people, especially in a rural area like Northumberland County. And just the idea of, older generations, we've been saying we shall overcome since Martin Luther King, and even in 2021, we're still saying we shall overcome. So that's an issue. Why are we still marching for the same things that we were marching for in the 60s and the 50s?
Good points.
I think the biggest thing I took away from this whole entire thing that's been happening that I will continue to grow from and take with me is being vocal. I've always been one to not say much and to just let things bottle in. But because of what's been happening, I've learned to become more vocal, and that doesn't only help me, but it helps people around me. Like, I know that that's going to have an impact on my brothers who are growing up in society that we are. And I also think when it comes to older generations, in order to have a conversation, both parties have to be willing to listen. You can't have a conversation with someone that's not going to listen and who isn't going to want to hear your opinion. But also, you can't give someone your opinion if you're not going to listen to them. So the one thing for me that I've constantly been doing is when I post things and I see things I don't necessarily agree with, I try to start a conversation, and I'll ask them questions. I'll ask, like, why do you feel this way? Why do you think this is happening? And then from there, that gives them the opportunity to think that, people are listening to them and that they can speak as well without being bashed, which I think has been happening a lot. A lot of people have been going back and forth bashing each other, not really listening. So I think listening is a big step to growing and to changing.
I agree. Yes.
I'm about to piggyback off my sister because we have the same thought, but I think in 2021 in a rural county like Northumberland,
the only way we will have progress is if there is a willingness to listen. And that's not only to young people, that is to anyone involved, because it takes everybody. It doesn't take just one person. Effort goes both ways. It doesn't go one. So I think I learned a lot about myself through this movement. I've learned that sometimes I am too patient, but that helped me in this sense, because instead of being quick to get angry with people because they don't have the same opinion as me, I try to better understand where they're coming from. I try to give my own research that I found, and I don't just say things, I back it up with facts, I back it up with data, because I think in today's society, you can be emotional about anything, but if you can provide statistics to prove your point, then, what can they really say? And I think that is something I saw at the Kilmarnock protest, was that a lot of the population was older generation. And I didn't just see black people. I saw white people, I saw black people, I saw Hispanic people. It was beautiful. It was like a melting pot. And I'm not used to that. Growing up in Northumberland, our high school was black, white. That's basically it. You had a couple of people of Hispanic origin, but that was really it. I think we had one Asian in school when I was there the whole 4 years. So to see that, it was absolutely beautiful. You saw people across the political spectrum. You saw Republicans, you saw Democrats, you saw independents. The Green Party was probably even there, to be honest. It was beautiful that people who typically would not have been supporters of the movement came and they wanted to hear us out without threatening us, without, just being quick to judge. I really appreciated that. So I think that is something that I will hold dear to my heart, was that people were just willing to listen.
Okay. What?
I think one thing that I really took away from everything that's been going on recently is the importance of asking why. Like, why do things happen? I think in rural areas particularly, a big problem is people being afraid of people who are too educated or too smart. Like, sometimes people run for political campaigns and people will say, oh, they just sound too smart or too intelligent. And if you think about that, like, that's something to ask, like, another why. Like, why are people in this country so scared of people coming in with facts and statistics? And I think that in this whole debate over whether Black Lives Matter, and like how that shouldn't be a debate, but the fact that we have to debate over whether like they do matter, I think that's also representative of another thing, like that we should be asking questions why. And I think that kind of like what Trinity was saying, you have to sometimes people aren't going to listen to you, and you kind of have to divide where you put your energy in. And I think that importance, like both sides need to be able to ask like why things happen, need to like be learning about what's going on. I kind of like lost my train of thought too. But basically what I was going to say is that for example, one thing police brutality, for example, a lot of things that I'll hear around this area is like, oh, well, not all cops are bad. And, that's, a very fair statement to say not all cops are bad, but that doesn't have anything to do with what's going on. A statistic that has something to do with what's going on is like when the police force started in the South, it started as slave patrols to catch runaway slaves. And so obviously that's infiltrated into our society because it's something we never talk about. It's not something that you learn about in school. And so that's very representative of also how systematic racism infiltrates like every aspect of society. Like I heard people talking about education. We need to be learning about what's really been going on in the history and modern day of our country, and media. I've learned a lot from being in college about like the different ways that minorities and specifically African Americans have been portrayed throughout history, like starting with the movie like Birth of a Nation, which depicted black males as rapists. You see like all kinds of stereotypes still in like the things that we see, and a lot of African Americans internalize that because that's what we grew up looking at. So I think that it's really important to just be able to confront the facts and with what's really going on and putting emotions aside.
Very good.
We had a very healthy discussion on our thoughts with the Black Lives Matter movement and how it personally affected us. So I just wanted to open the floor for closing thoughts and summarizations of the movement.
Okay. Does that help you get your thought back?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
continuing the legacy of activism and political involvement in America, because we see MLK and them marching signs, and the younger generation doing the same thing, and it just keeps getting better. There's like this saying, it's like one generation away from freedom or something like that. And it's like each generation, we take in these old ideas and we add our youthful, like, rejuvenating spin on them, and they get better. So I think that's a big part of what Black Lives Matter stands for.
Okay.
Just going off of that, like any of the movements you were talking about, and like the movement today, hopefully continues, right? I hope it will continue. All of the rights we have in this country, as a country, have come from people who are oppressed, extending those rights. If we didn't have unions, we wouldn't have the 5-day work week or weekends. It would be no such thing as an employer health insurance, for example. If we didn't have African Americans fighting for freedom right after they got out of slavery, we wouldn't have had 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And I would argue the 14th Amendment is probably one of the most important amendments we have. And then without MLK, we wouldn't have the Civil Rights Act. It's 1964, which not only has protected African Americans, but have protected the people who have persecuted African Americans. So we have to realize, I just think that people should realize that these social movements, they don't just benefit the oppressed, but they still benefit everyone, including the oppressors. And that's happened all throughout American history. Those who have the least going for them, essentially holding up the country. And people should remember that. And they should also remember that whether they want progress or not, it will happen. And you have a choice. You either go with it or you get left behind.
It's true. Good, very good thoughts. Next, anybody?
I think another discrepancy that the Black Lives Matter movement highlighted was the difference in between like what I felt like as an African American female in comparison to like my white peers, like what we stood for with like our age and maturity level. Like per se, I think something that it brought up was allowing Black people to just be Black instead of being like, I'm 15 and I feel like I have to be a revolutionary in order to just gain some voice in my area. I know that my experience is a little different because I went to Christ Church. I didn't go to Northumberland, and that's a predominantly white school. And I felt like at that school in particular that I was just constantly fighting a lot of different battles for everything. And I also kind of felt a little alone just because there were so few other people who looked like me. And so I feel like we shouldn't, if we educated older people, we wouldn't have to put pressure like that on young children to educate people, like not only their peers, but their teachers. And I feel like that's a lot of pressure that like I've talked to other people who are in very like predominantly white environments or predominantly white schools, and they just feel like they are constantly having to be a catalyst for change, and that it interferes with their education and their ability to learn. And so I think that's something that is also really important to think about. So.
I would just like to say that it takes a lot of energy to be the voice for the voiceless, but don't drain yourself trying to feed information to people who aren't willing to listen. I think that's part of it. We can't change the world by changing every single person's opinions, because that just won't happen. But you have to think about yourself and your health, I think, and you can only explain so much to someone that is not really willing to listen. But I did want to thank Northumberland Public Library for having this conversation. I think this is the start of many other conversations in the county, and I can only see good things coming from this, so I think that's pretty awesome.
Sure. Did you want to say anything else, Khadijah?
I can just add that change does happen at home, and it has to start with conversations and dialogues at home. And I know it's hard for some people. I am grateful for my mom and her being willing to let us grow up and have our own opinions and still being there for us no matter what. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. So I can't just tell you to go start a conversation with your parents who don't agree with you, because it could end badly. But just for everyone, just be mindful that listening is key. That's the key to change.
It is.
I think for me, just for closing thoughts, Black Lives Matter was a reminder to me that there was no system in this country that was built or created to benefit African Americans. Not a financial system, not a education system. Nothing was created in order for us to get ahead. And Black Lives Matter really symbolizes that while, yes, white lives and Hispanic lives, Asian, all of those lives, they do matter, but they cannot matter until Black Lives Matter. And I think, this movement coming in a period where we had nothing to do but sit at home and think about that, that's what created a melting pot, and it created a space for all different shades and all different sexualities, religions to come out, because people have now realized that Black people have been oppressed in this country for so many years. When can it stop? And it can stop with us.
So what are some of your thoughts about how maybe we can work together to change those thoughts?
Want to go first?
Yeah, sure. By showing that we aren't violent people just because of our skin color, and that we don't really have violent actions unless we are provoked enough, because most people of any race don't end up doing anything unless provoked enough. And it takes a while, but if provoked enough, they will fight back.
I think we all have that ingrained in us, fight or flight, that kind of thing. What about you, Destiny?
I think that we all need to exercise a lot of patience when dealing with anyone. Whether they are black, white, light-skinned, it really doesn't matter. You really shouldn't see color like that.
Great.
Color does not make the person. The personality makes the person.
That makes sense, a lot of sense. And since your grandma had something to say, I'm going to swing over to her just for a second and ask her a question. So you've had an opportunity to see these two girls and spend a lot of time with them. And I heard you say that what we need to do is change the heart. And I wholeheartedly agree with you there. How do you think we, as an older generation, can help them to do that?
First of all, I think the very first thing is teaching our children that color doesn't matter. It's the character of the person that matters. And even if a person is brought up in a prejudiced household, when they're shown love, it makes a difference. So love is the answer. Not violence, not color, but love. And that makes the difference in any race, in any household.
That's a great way for me to end this video. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much, girls, for being here and for sharing your thoughts with me. And you will see this at our Black History Month in our videos that we're going to put on Facebook and on our YouTube channel in February.